Welcome to H360 Health Talk. I'm here today joined by Frank Shane, the founder and CEO of Canine Disaster Relief. Frank is a certified canine trauma service specialist. We're going to hear all about that, but he's here really today to talk about the role of canines and animals in general that they play in trauma therapy. Frank, great to have you with us today.
Thank you, Dave. Pleasure.
So Frank, you've been doing this for quite a while, and as I understand it, you got started a number of years ago at JFK in a brain trauma unit in Edison, New Jersey. Take me back to that day that you started the Canine Disaster Relief, where you started working with dogs, support dogs, and realized that, there's really something here to benefit patients and their caregivers.
I'll start with Nike. His name is NiCad Batteries Rechargeable. He got the nickname Nike, N-I-K-E, when he started working on Ground Zero. But Nike, you couldn't train. From the time he was a puppy, he had his own mindset. He was stubborn, wanted to do his own thing. Just really didn't. I've been training dogs for 30 years, and Nike, I thought, well, I've met my match. And I tried everything, and then I realized he really needed a job. He needed something to do.
We all do.
He didn't want to be a dog.
Yeah.
Well, he wanted to be a dog with a purpose and something to do, and that was really the way his brain was wired. Sort of like humans too. Some are happy being on a beach, and others want to do the most complicated things. And he was able to transition into what I thought could be a therapy dog. And back then, and we're talking about the 90s now, mid-90s or so, therapy dogs were not embraced in hospitals.
And why is that, do you think?
Well, I guess it's like anything new, if you will. Why? Somebody said, well, why? Don't we have enough to do than have a dog, screwing up our routine, and they're going to get in the way, and they might step on the wires, and they might, the 20 list of things that...
Of why this is a bad idea.
Yeah, and usually, and we didn't have at the time, the empirical data, and the only way you can get that is to try it and get them in the hospital and learn from that.
Right, yep.
So, therapy organizations, therapy dog organizations, comfort dog organizations were really just beginning at that time. There's just so many other things going on. But where it gets a little more complicated with the traditional therapy dog is you are dealing with patients and interns and doctors and nurses and noises and smells and food and all these things that with a traditional dog with no training would just overwhelm them, and they would want to go toward the food, or they'd be scared of a wheelchair. So I went that route, and Nike was just completely bored. 9 months or so before 9/11, I get a call from the JFK Brain Trauma Center in Edison, and they said, could you bring your dog this Sunday? I said, sure. I had no idea what they had in mind. So we went, and they're on the second floor, and we get off. And I very quickly learned that when you're on the second floor, generally you're not leaving.
These are the worst case scenarios that you're dealing with here.
They had in mind that perhaps, and they didn't know Nike, what he did, or actually in trauma work, in brain trauma work, none of us knew where that was going to go. So they wanted him to go logically to where the parents, the brothers and sisters, the family who were traveling hundreds of miles in some cases to see their brother, sister, mother, and it was excruciating. I couldn't even put myself in their shoes, what it's like to see. We started going over to this big room, and all of a sudden, Nike started going over to another direction. And he went into a room, and there was a young lady there, and she was comatose, tubes, everything else, blue eyes, staring at the ceiling, which is not, as I learned later, unusual. Well, Nike stuck, her name was Lil, and she was in an automobile accident coming back from her wedding shower. So around the bed was her whole family, her fiance, and you look up on a bulletin board and you see their whole life there, because that's what happens.
Sure.
That was a life-changing moment for me, and as it turned out, for Nike. And I didn't realize how close that would be and how poignant that would be, that he worked with Lil all the time, to the point where we got off the elevator one day and I see Lil sitting in a wheelchair, which was incredible.
Going from a comatose state, staring up at the sky.
Yeah, we're talking months here.
Yep.
Right? So Lil is in this chair, and I'm supposed to take direction from people, but they trusted Nike at that point. They instinctively knew that he had connectivity, and I didn't have to really direct him. I really wasn't doing a lot of the things that you were trained to do in traditional pet therapy.
Nike just had this sense and did what he did, and the patient was somewhat reacting to that, and you were watching this begin to unfold over months.
Yeah, and this was the point where nobody knew at that point what was really going on. It's grains of sand that happened. Blink, just a little bit of a movement. And it was a real stretch for them, I can imagine, to put her in a wheelchair. And her parents, her fiance, this was at a time of the week and so forth when it was very quiet, and she was there, and Nike went up, and he sat about 10 feet from her, and he sat there, and he just looked at her, and all of a sudden she blinked.
Wow.
The first time she blinked. And the physical therapist came up, and they went through a type of communication skills to see what was happening. Was it just an accident, or what was this? And they determined that they were talking through blinking.
Interesting. Because she couldn't verbally talk, she was sending some level of communication through the blinking with Nike.
Yeah, and as I learned later on, dogs, of course, now it's well documented. They're used in cancer patients and heart patients.
That's right.
And, a lot of things
patients.
other than
Yep.
just, the seeing eyes
Sure.
for the blind and hearing dogs. But in the research that I've done and the publications that I've done, the dogs are picking up the cortisol when you're fight and flight,
Yep.
and when you're exuding. We're all doing that all the time. Chemicals and a dog's ability to smell, the only way, I mean, it's hundreds of thousands of, the way I explain it is if you can imagine a kaleidoscope and taking one color, let's say red, and you break that into the hundreds of spectrums of light. A dog smells that same way. They can slice the air. When a dog puts his ears up, people think, well, maybe it's because they're happy or something. Well, they're curious.
Right.
And really what they're doing is the ears are going up. It's trapping the scent cone, especially with a long-nosed dog.
Sure.
Their whole nose and everything else is a scent cone, but that the ears up just sort of, it's like when you put your hand out the window. If you go like this, you can feel just that pressure.
The resistance, yeah.
And it's that just millisecond where a dog can distinguish, because what he was able to do over all those months was take a baseline of Lil.
Sure.
I don't know on her side of her adapting to that. So I think there were verbal and other sensory cues that she was picking up. But maybe more important, she felt comfortable with him, because she's not getting wires put in her, and she's not. It was just a very interesting moment, and it was a learning curve, I think, for all of us, that we just all stepped back and watched. And that's where I learned at that point to look and listen to the dog. And that eventually, that was my ability to work on ground zero. We go on a Sunday, which was our traditional day, to see Lil. We go up, the elevator door opens, and Nike became what he was, the stubborn, and he wasn't going to move, wasn't going to get off, and I thought he was sick. So the nurse started to come over, and I was going to tell her that Nike's not feeling well today, and it's best if we come back. And she said, oh my God. And of course, when she said that, I thought the worst. She says, oh my God, I forgot to call you. Lil went home.
Went home.
She went home. Yep.
Wow.
And he knew it.
Something wasn't right.
He
Lil
knew
was
it.
not there, and
Lil was not there.
he knew when the elevator door opened.
I could say it, sensory. He scented. There was more than that, though. I can put more to it together now, and understanding from the body of work that we've done over 17 years, and that's really was the genesis of where I am today. So he would never. They called me the following week, and they said, well, are you coming? And I said, well, I'll see. Nike wouldn't get in. I had a Jeep at the time, red Jeep. He wouldn't get in. His work was done. Depression, he started to lose weight. He wouldn't eat. He didn't want to walk. I took him to the vet, and everything checked out fine.
Frank, thanks so much for being here. It was great having you on the show, and I look forward to continuing our conversation.
I do too. Thanks for having me.